Good evening, Hamilton, and everybody who's here this evening. Thank you very much. I want to talk about the infiniteness of the universe and the danger of repetition, but don't worry, it's going to take exactly 15 seconds. I have watched myself introduce a couple of different events, and I keep trying not to do the same thing over and over again, including this speech, which I think I did a couple of months ago, but I just want to say that it is always very cool to be in front of cameras and an audience, to be performing something that has come either organically or from a really, really good source. So just everybody who's taking part in this, thank you very much for being here. Readers Theater, which I don't want to sum up yet again because most people here have an idea of what it's about. Essentially, it's kind of the line between a podcast, which can be constructed, and a live improvised performance, which comes out of nowhere. Readers Theater is directly in the middle because you know where you're starting from. You can tinker with the content a little bit, but you're still going to be tied to a page, and that's actually a good thing because the page is like an anchor. It keeps you from floating too far away. I've always liked the forum, which is why I wanted to start doing it in Hamilton. CFDA has been nice enough to let me do it. I greatly appreciate it. Anybody who's here who would like either a drink or a snack or to buy a t-shirt, which are incredibly cool, except I couldn't wear one with this shirt because I would look like a priest. I just realized I can't wear white. It's definitely in that direction. I want to thank, as always, at the very top of the show, despite the fact I said I don't want to repeat myself, I want to do this every time. Dex and Jake, thank you very much for letting us do this. You're very welcome. And just give you a very brief rundown of what we're going to do tonight. The pieces are in this order, something called the Spoon River Anthology, which I never forgot. Very, very simply, I came across it in the early 80s. And it was on a stack of stuff that I was told is either too heavy for my age or too dry for my age or something. But there were 5 or 6 pieces I never forgot, and I wanted to look at them again. That's why they're here. There's a James Joyce story from Dubliners, and I do not have the wherewithal or the guts to do it in an Irish accent because I would truly offend my Irish relatives, most of whom have been dead for at least 100 years. And also, I know a really good dialect coach in England, and if I did my accent to her, she would laugh for around 45 minutes or cry for 45 minutes and tell me not to do it. And also a piece from, Ernest Hemingway, and before you roll your eyes at that, yes, his novels were terrible. They were really, really awful, and a lot of his stuff became a cliche around 10 years after he wrote it, but there were exceptions. And this is one of those exceptions where that kind of clipped, dry prose works. We're also going to have 3 original pieces from Theriault, who's come in from Toronto, Jason Thompson, and Jen Frankel, all of whom are from Hamilton, like myself. And a really brief rundown for me. I've been doing events here at the CFDA, storytelling events and Readers Theater for the last year. I used to be an actor, and I was a storyteller in Toronto, and I'm a storyteller here. So we're going to start with the Spoon River Anthology and go from one story to the next. There's not going to be an intermission or anything like that. Sit back and watch it, and thank you. There you go.
The scene is funereal. The voices performing are those who rest or simply lie in the graves of the Spoon River Cemetery. Ladies and gentlemen, your kind attention to my interpretation of the scene. I rise to give you your fancy comprehension and analyze the parts of the machine. My mood is such that I would not deceive you, though still a liar and the father of it. From judgment's frailty, I would retrieve you. Though falsehood is my art, and though I love it, down in the habitations whence I rise, the roots of human sorrow boundless spread. Long have I watched them draw the strength that lies in clay, made richer by the rotting dead.
Mrs. Williams. I was the milliner, talked about, lied about. My eye, quick to beauty, saw much besides ribbons and buckles, and feathers, and leghorns and felts to set off sweet faces, and dark hair, and gold. One thing I will tell you, and one I will ask. The stealers of husbands wear powder and trinkets and fashionable hats. Wives, wear them yourself. Hats may make divorces. They can also prevent them. Well, now let me ask you, if all of the children born here in Spoon River had been reared by the county somewhere on a farm, and the fathers and mothers had been given their freedom to live and enjoy, change mates if they wished, do you think that Spoon River had been any the worse?
Thomas Rhodes, president of the bank. Very well, you liberals and navigators into realms intellectual, you sailors through heights imaginative, blown about by erratic currents, tumbling into air pockets, you found with all your boasted wisdom how hard at the last it is to keep the soul from splitting into cellular atoms, while we, seekers of earth's treasures, getters and hoarders of gold, are self-contained, compact, harmonized, even to the end.
Eugene Carmen, Rhodes' slave. Selling shoes and gingham, flour and bacon, overalls, clothing all day long for 14 hours a day for 313 days for more than 20 years, saying yes'm and yes sir and thank you 1,000 times a day. All for $50 a month, living in this stinking room in the Rattletrap commercial. And compelled to go to Sunday school and to listen to the Reverend Abner Pete 104 times a year for more than an hour at a time because Thomas Rhodes ran the church, as well as the store and the bank. So as I was tying my necktie that morning, I suddenly saw myself in the glass, my hair gray, my face like a sodden pie, and I cursed, you damned old thing. You rotten dog. You rotten pauper, you Rhodes slave, until Roger Bauman thought I was having a fight with someone, and he looked through the transom just in time to see me fall on the floor in a heap with my broken vein in my head.
Clarence Fawcett. The sudden death of Eugene Carmen put me in line to be promoted to $50 a month. I told my wife and my children that night, but it didn't come. And so I thought, old Rhodes suspected me of stealing the blankets I took and sold on the side for money to pay for my doctor bills for my little girl. Then, like a bolt, old Rhodes accused me and promised me mercy for my family's sake if I confessed. So I confessed and begged him to keep it out of the papers. And I asked the editors too. That night, at home, the constable took me, and every paper except the Clarion wrote me up as a thief because old Rhodes was an advertiser and wanted to make an example of me. Oh, well, you know how the children cried, how the wife pitied and hated me, and how I came to lie here.
Benjamin Pantier. Together in this grave lie Benjamin Pantier, attorney at law, and Blanc, his dog, constant companion, solace, and friend. Down the gray road, friends, children, men and women, passing one by one out of life, left me till I was alone, with Blanc for partner, bedfellow, comrade in drink, In the morning of life, I knew aspirations and saw glory. The she who survives me snared my soul with a snare which bled me to death, till I, once strong of will, lay broken, indifferent, living with Blanc in a room back of a dingy office. Under my jawbone is snuggled the bony nose of Blanc. Our story is lost in silence. Go by, mad world.
Mrs. Benjamin Pantier, I know that he told that I snared his soul with a snare which bled him to death, and all the men loved him, and most of the women pitied him. But suppose you were really a lady and have delicate tastes, and loathe the smell of whiskey and onions, and the rhythm of Wordsworth odes runs in your ear while he goes about from morning till night, repeating bits of that common thing. Oh, why should the spirit of mortal be proud? And then suppose you are a woman well endowed, and the only man whom the law and morality permit you to have the marital relation is the very man that fills you with disgust every time you think of it, while you think of it every time you see him. That's why I drove him away from home to live with his dog in a dingy room back of his office.
Spoon River Clarion editor Whedon. To be able to see every side of every question, to be on every side, to be everything, to be nothing long, to pervert truth, to ride it for a purpose, to use great feelings and passions for the human family, for base designs, for cunning ends, to wear a mask like the Greek actors, your 8-page paper behind which you huddle, bawling through the megaphone of big type. This is I, the giant, thereby also living the life of a sneak thief, poisoned with the anonymous words of your clandestine soul, to scratch dirt over scandal for money and exhume it to the winds for revenge, or to sell papers, crushing reputations or bodies if need be, to win at any cost, save your own life, to glory in demonic power, ditching civilization as a paranoid boy puts a log on the track and derails the express train, to be an editor, as I was, and then to lie here close by the river over the place where the sewage flows from the village and the empty cans and garbage are dumped and abortions are hidden.
Carl Hamblin. The press of the Spoon River Clarion was wrecked, and I was tarred and feathered for publishing this on the day that the anarchists were hanged in Chicago. I saw a beautiful woman with bandaged eyes, standing on the steps of a marble temple. Great multitudes passed in front of her, lifting their faces to her imploringly. In her left hand, she held a sword. She was brandishing the sword, sometimes striking a child, again, a laborer, again, a slinking woman, again, a lunatic. In her right hand, she held a scale. Into the scale, pieces of gold were tossed by those who dodged the strokes of the sword. A man in a black gown read from a manuscript, "She is no respecter of persons." Then a youth wearing a red cap leapt to her side, snatched away the bandage, and lo, the lashes had been eaten away from those oozy eyelids. The eyeballs were smeared with a milky mucus. The madness of a dying soul was written on her face. But the multitude saw why she wore the bandage.
Nancy Knapp. Well, don't you see? This was the way of it. We bought the farm with what my husband inherited, and his brother and sisters accused him of poisoning his father's mind against the rest of them, so we never had any peace with our treasure. The Moraine took the cattle, and the crops failed, and lightning struck the granary, so we mortgaged the farm to keep going. And he grew silent and was worried all the time. Then some of the neighbors refused to speak to us and took side with his brother and sisters, and I had no place to turn, as one may say to oneself at an earlier time in life. No matter, so-and-so is my friend, or I can shake this off with a little trip to hotels in Georgia. Then, the dreadfulest of smells infected the room. So, I set fire to the beds, and the old witch house went up in a roar of flame as I danced in the yard with waving arms, while he wept like a freezing steer.
Butch Weldy. After I got religion and steadied down, they gave me a job in the canning works. And every morning I had to fill a tank in the yard with gasoline. That fed the blow fires in the sheds to heat the soldering irons, and I mounted a rickety ladder to do it, carrying buckets of the stuff. One morning, as I stood there pouring, the air grew still. It seemed to heave. And I shot up like as the tank exploded, and down I came with both broken legs, and my eyes burned crisp as a couple of eggs. For someone left a blow fire going, and something sucked that flame into the tank. Now, the circuit judge said whoever did it was a fellow servant of mine, and so old Rhodes' son didn't have to pay me. And I sat in the witness stand as blind as Jack the Fiddler, saying over and over again, I didn't know him at all.
Ralph Rhodes. All they said is true. I wrecked my father's bank with my loans to dabble in wheat, but, this was true, I was buying wheat for him as well. He couldn't margin the deal in his name because of his church relationship. And while George Reese was serving his term, I chased the will-o'-the-wisp of women and the mockery of wine in New York. It is deathly to sicken of wine and women when nothing else is left in life. But suppose your hair is gray and bowed on a table covered with acrid stubs of cigarettes and empty glasses. And a knock is heard. And you know that it is the knock that is so long drowned out by popping corks and the peacock screams of demi-reps. And you look up, and there's your theft who waited until your hair was gray and your heart skipped beats to say to you, the game is over. I've called for you. Go out on Broadway and be run over. They'll ship you back to Spoon River. Thank you.
A Small World by John Frankel. He lay beside her, his long body curved into hers, knees pressing into the back of her legs. His warmth was almost oppressive, a third presence in the bed. And although she struggled to enjoy this moment of closeness, her discomfort drove her to rise. The morning sun came pale through the window in the eaves, printing long streaks of corn-colored light over the dresser and wall. She touched the table beside the bed, thinking curiously that these familiar things seemed closer together than before. At least her body seemed to fit more awkwardly between them, as if she had grown clumsy in the night. The chair, too, seemed to have moved itself closer to the center of the room, which necessitated her holding her hand out as she passed it, a ship pressing itself away from the shoals. Maybe it was her balance, she thought, an off-kilter in her ear. She washed and dressed in silence, not wanting to wake him. The tiny room pressed in on her, and she didn't need his help to make it seem too full. Out on the street, the sidewalks were narrower than she remembered from the day before. She crossed each pavement crack with fewer steps. When the bus came, she had the odd impression that the blacktop had itself contracted, pulling the bus to her feet. Her shoulder grazed the frame of the bus's door on the way up its steps. When she saw the tiny coins in her palm as she paid her fare, she was sure. The world was shrinking around her. All day it was the same, a progressive and always accelerating diminishment of everything around her. By the time she left work, she was no longer able to fit behind her desk. The elevator groaned as she boarded it. Walls pressed in on her, the ceilings drooped to brush her hair. She stooped to exit the building and found that even the sky was lower. Out on the street, skyscrapers shrank visibly, their clean lines merging as distant city blocks sped toward her. People crowding the rush hour sidewalks seemed to merge, running together like watercolor. Where before there had been individual human beings, now she only discerned an unidentified mass. Worse, despite her outlandish proportions, why did she attract no outrage, no attention at all? It wasn't worth taking the bus now, even if she could have squeezed herself aboard, when a single pace took her home. Another took her miles beyond, while the ground contracted so severely that the entire city became as small as the bed she'd risen from that morning. Her bed itself would have become the size of a postage stamp, now as big as a grain of rice. And as the lines of traffic became white and red threads on a darkening fabric of green, the head of a pin, the eye of a flea. She towered unsteadily over the lake, watching with sick fascination as the curve of the earth at the horizon became more prominent. And still, the world grew smaller. The stars in the sky rushed toward her, crowding her, making her bend. The moon, no bigger than a tennis ball, sailed past her ear. All the loneliness of the heavens, all the sadness of the celestial music of lost civilizations, killed slowly by dying, swollen stars, or in an instant of brilliant supernova, all these swept past her and through her. She felt hollow and empty. There was not enough matter in the universe to fill up the empty spaces between her atoms, not now that the universe was so tiny. She cupped her hands around the Milky Way galaxy only to see it dwindle, a snowflake melting on a warm palm. And what size now? Her bed? Her table beside it? The space between his knees and hers. And she found herself beyond it all, a bystander to the continuity of creation. She had passed outside it, the moment that she bridged the final divide, already shrinking away into the past. The universe itself rested in the palm of her hand, a black sphere peppered with a sprinkling of minute stars. She didn't know at exactly what point the universe had separated itself from her, or her from it, or why she was outside creation now, a lonely being severed from both eternity and infinity. She thought of the warmth of her tiny bed, the long body which rested beside her at night. The loneliness of a billion dead worlds was nothing now to the gaping hole in her own self. She cried out, What a distressingly small protest for a creature who dwarfed all existence, and looked at last deep into the ball of the universe, shrinking smaller and smaller in her hand. "No!" she screamed, knowing in that moment that her agony would rock the whole of creation to its foundations. "No," she said, softer this time, and with determination, and wondered if her bedmate could hear, wondered if the earth itself could have survived the percussive wail which had torn itself from her. She knew she couldn't let the world go on without her, that even if it shrank to nothing, to the minutest synapse between the cells of her brain, to fit the space inside an atom, she wanted to belong again to it. Her fingers curled and reached in, breaking the starry surface of the tiny infinity in her palm. She spread her thumb from the fingers, digging in deep. With both hands now, she wrenched the universe open like an orange. It distended in her grasp, and she tugged at it, willing it to let her back in. Then, as it gave under her pressure, she was able to put a hand inside, then a foot, then her whole leg. It was dizzying, this feeling of re-entry. Her claustrophobia lifted, like a heavy curtain rising effortlessly on swift pulleys. Her melancholy receded, a fast ebb, and she felt ready to face the world on its own terms, in its own size. Something deep in the universe changed, and she lost all sense of solid ground. With a strange whooshing noise, it opened itself to her, and she crossed into it, no longer a behemoth, no more an alien or an uncomfortable beast, just a woman, and small, happily, comfortably, appropriately small. And she fell, wind whistling past her, buffeting her ears. It tossed her at first, seemingly with random abandon. Then she opened the eyes she had clenched shut without conscious intent and saw she was spiraling down instead, down through a night sky filled with stars. She fell like a maple key does, in tighter and tighter circles toward the star-like city lights below. Soon, she could see the familiar pattern of the wide and traffic-hungry arteries of main streets, the bright, foamy streams of the highways boxing downtown. The lake sparkled with diamonds stolen from above and below. Still she fell, losing her god's perspective and spiraling ever more closely toward a single apartment rooftop, her own. A solitary light stood in the eaves, an anchor point on which her descent was centered. A shadow moved past the light as she neared, a shape she knew so well. It clenched her insides unexpectedly with joy, and she slid through the roof with as little resistance as she had put her foot into the entire universe. He lay his long body down, wrapping her in his warmth, knees tucked behind hers, a perfect fit. The world was a cozy place, just right for sleeping in or rushing to work. She lay in the dark, hearing them both breathe, and watched the stars vanish into the yellow morning. Thank you.
clean, well-lighted place. Ernest Hemingway. It was very late, and everyone had left the cafe except an old man who sat in the shadow the leaves of the tree made against the electric light.
In the daytime, the street was dusty, but at night the dew settled in the dust, and the old man liked to sit late because he was deaf, and now at night it was quiet, and he felt the difference.
The two waiters inside the cafe knew that the old man was a little drunk. And while he was a good client, they knew that if he became too drunk, he would leave without paying. So they kept watch on him.
Last week he tried to commit suicide.
Why?
He was in despair.
What about?
Nothing.
How do you know it was nothing?
He has plenty of money.
The old man sitting in the shadow rapped on his saucer with his glass.
What do you want? What do you want?
Another brandy.
You'll be drunk.
The old man looked at him, dismissed him with a wave. The waiter went away.
He'll stay all night. I'm sleepy now. I never get him to bed before 3 o'clock. He should have killed himself last week. You should have killed yourself last week.
A little more.
The waiter poured onto the glass so that the brandy slopped over and ran down the stem into the top saucer of the pile.
Thank you, the old man said, and sips gently. From being an old man into a narrator. The waiter took the bottle back inside the cafe. He sat down at the table with his colleague again.
He's drunk now.
He's drunk every night.
What did he want to kill himself for?
How should I know?
How did he do it?
Hung himself with a rope.
Who cut him down?
His niece.
Why'd she do it?
Fear for his soul.
How much money does he got?
He's got plenty.
He must be 80 years old. Anyway, I should say he was 80.
I wish you would go home. I never get to bed before 3 o'clock. What kind of an hour is that to go to bed?
He stays up because he likes it.
He's lonely. I'm not lonely. I have a wife waiting in bed for me.
He had a wife too once.
A wife would be no good to him now.
You can't tell. He might be better with a wife.
His niece looks after him. You said she cut him
I
down.
know.
I wouldn't want to be that old. An old man is a nasty thing.
Not always. This old man is clean. He drinks without spilling. Even now, drunk. Look at him.
I don't want to look at him. I wish he'd go home. He has no regard for those who must work.
The old man looked from his glass across the square and over at the waiters. Another brandy, he said, pointing to his glass.
The waiter, who was in a hurry, came over. Finished, he said, speaking with that omission of syntax stupid people employ when talking to drunken people or foreigners. No more tonight. Close now.
Another!
No, finished.
The old man stood up, slowly counted the saucer, took a leather corn purse from his pocket, and paid for the drinks, leaving half a peseta tip.
Why didn't you let him stay and drink? It's not 2:30.
I want to go home to bed.
What is an hour?
More to me than to him.
An hour is the same.
You talk like an old man yourself. He can buy a bottle and drink at home.
It's not the same.
No, it's not. He did not wish to be unjust. He was only in a hurry.
And you? You have no fear of going home before your usual hour?
Are you trying to insult me?
No, hombre. Only to make a joke.
Oh, I have confidence. I am all confidence.
You have youth, confidence, and a job. You have everything.
And what do you lack?
Everything but work.
You have everything I have.
No. I never had confidence, and I am not young.
Come on, stop talking nonsense and lock up.
I'm one of those who like to stay late at the cafe with all those who don't want to go to bed, with all those who need a night light for the night.
I want to go home and into bed.
We have two very different kinds. It's not only a question of youth and confidence, although those are very beautiful. Each night I'm reluctant to close up because there might be someone who needs the cafe.
Hombre, there are the bodegas open all night long.
You do not understand. This is a clean and pleasant cafe. It is well lighted. The light is very good, and also now there are shadows of the leaves.
Good night.
Good night.
It was a light, of course, but it was necessary that the place be clean and pleasant.
You do not want music.
You certainly do not want music.
Nor can you stand before a bar with dignity, although that is all that is provided for these hours.
What did he fear?
It was not a fear or dread. It was nothing that he knew too well.
It was all a nothing, and a man was a nothing too.
It was only that, and light was all it needed, and a certain cleanliness and order.
Some lived in it and never felt it, but
He knew it was all nada. Nada pues nada pues nada pues nada are nada who art in nada. Nada be thy name, thy kingdom nada, thy will be in nada, as earth as it is in nada. Give us nada, our daily nada, and forgive us our nada as we date is not nada, but deliver us from nada, pues nada. Hail nothing, full of nothing, nothing is with thee.
he stood before a bodega. What's yours? said
Nada.
the barman. Orto loco mas, said the barman and turned away.
A little cup.
The barman pours it for him.
The light is very bright and pleasant, but the bar is unpolished, the waiter said.
The barman looked at him but did not answer. It was too late at night for conversation.
You want another capita? The barman asked.
No, thank you, said the waiter, and he went out.
He disliked bars and bodegas.
A clean, well-lighted cafe was a very different thing.
Now, without thinking further, he would go home to his room. He would lie in the bed, and finally, with daylight, he would go to sleep. After all, he said to himself, it's probably only insomnia. Many must have it. Thank you.
A Lion's Promise. Once, long ago on the plains of the Serengeti, a mighty lion had taken a path to a watering hole and smelled something wrong. The smell was not his preferred wild game, but that of some scheming humans. The lion knew of the danger of humans and had to make a choice to either follow the path to water or take a detour through the brush that might spook his quarry. The human smell had made him fearful, but the journey was the same one he took the day before, so he thought it safe to continue down the path. Where the stench of humans was most foul, the lion sprung a trap that wrapped him in strong rope netting. His mighty roars, his sharp claws and fangs did nothing to the tough rope, and after struggling well into the night, the lion was exhausted. Just as all hope of freedom had vanished, and he resigned himself to living his life in a zoo or something far worse, a small voice from the darkness made themselves known. "Do you need assistance?" a tiny voice asked. "Yes," bellowed the lion. "I can't escape this trap. I'm your king. Save me."
I can see that. You can't seem to bite or claw through that net, said the tiny voice. But I am not your subject.
I am the most powerful hunter in this land! The mighty lion roared with anger and frustration.
The tiny voice replied, I am not the most powerful anything, but I could help you to get free. Out of the shadows, a small mouse crept into the lion's view.
Chew through these ropes, mouse, and I will favor you in my kingdom, the lion pleaded.
Your ropes are many, and I could get eaten before I finish. Would you protect my family if I got them to help me?
I will reward you and your king who helps me free with gifts and protection as long as I reign, promised the lion.
My kind doesn't live long, but if we free you, will you protect my children?
The mouse asked. As long as I or my children rule, we will protect your kin. The king has said it, he bellowed into the darkness. With that pledge, thousands of mice leapt out of the darkness and set upon the ropes, chewing and gnawing them to bits. The bellows of the lion's promise attracted many nighttime predators to feast upon the mice. Owls carried them off screaming into the dark, while dogs and cats gobbled up the mice till they could eat no more. But still, the mice chewed on. By morning, the mice were few, but the lion was free, running just ahead of the human machines. The lion escaped into the fields and freedom. Years later, the lion had a huge pride with many wives. He sat under the shade of the tree most of his days, and his wives fed him, and his children grew up fat and happy. One year, the rains didn't come. No plants grew, and the watering holes dried up. The famine made the animals desperate. The lioness brought home the dried carcass of the dead, and even the lion grew thirsty. It was then that the lion heard the tiny voice again. We are starving and thirsty and need your protection, mighty lion, said a mouse. What can I do to protect you from a famine? I do not command the rains to fall or the plants to grow. What you ask, I cannot provide, said the lion. Oh, but you can, and you must. Fulfill your promise and protect my kin, mighty lion, said the mouse. The lion stood towering over the mouse and bent his head down and ate the impudent mouse in one bite. Just then, the youngest of the cubs cried out in pain and was swarmed by biting mice. The lioness mother leapt to defend her child and was swarmed by biting mice. All the cubs and lionesses fell to their own swarms of biting mice, till only the lion remained, surrounded by thousands of hungry mice. A mouse with a fat belly
and drenched in blood, stepped forward. Even though you broke your promise, you and your kin will sustain mine, mighty lion.
The Boarding House by James Joyce. Mrs. Mooney was a butcher's daughter.
She was a woman who was quite able to keep things to herself, a determined woman. She had married her father's foreman and opened a butcher shop near Spring Gardens.
But as soon as his father-in-law was dead, Mr. Mooney began to go to the devil.
By fighting with his wife in the presence of customers, and by buying bad meat, he ruined his business.
One night he went for his wife with the cleaver, and she had to sleep at a neighbor's house. After that, they lived apart.
Mrs. Mooney, who had taken what remained of her money out of the butcher business, set up a boarding house in Harwick Street. She was a big, imposing woman.
Her house had a floating population made up of tourists from Liverpool and the Isle of Man, and occasionally artistes from the music halls. Its resident population was made up of clerks from the city.
She governed her house cunningly and firmly, knew when to give credit, when to be stern, and when to let things pass.
All the resident young men spoke of her as the Madam.
Mrs. Mooney's young men paid 15 shillings a week for board and lodgings, beer or stout at dinner excluded. They shared in common tastes and occupations, and for this reason they were very chummy with one another.
On Sunday nights, there would often be a reunion in Mrs. Mooney's front drawing room. The music hall artistes would oblige. Polly Mooney, the Madam's daughter, would also sing.
I'm a naughty girl. You needn't sham. You know I am.
Polly was a slim girl of 19. She had light soft hair and a small, full mouth. Her eyes, which were gray with a shade of green through them, had a habit of glancing upwards when she spoke with anyone, which made her look like a little perverse Madonna.
And Polly was very lively. The intention was to give her the run of the young men. Besides, young men like to feel that there's a young woman not very far away.
And it was a bright Sunday morning of early summer. Mrs. Mooney sat in the straw armchair and began to reconstruct the interview which she had the night before with Polly.
Things were as she suspected. She had been frank in her questions, and Polly had been frank in her answers. It was 17 minutes past 11. She would have lots of time to have the matter out with Mr. Duran.
He was a serious young man, not rakish or loud-voiced like the others. He was 34 or 35 years of age, so that youth could not be pleaded as his excuse.
He had simply taken advantage of Polly's youth and inexperience. That was evident.
He had been employed for 13 years in a great Catholic wine merchant's office, and publicity would mean for him, perhaps, the loss of his job.
The affair would surely be talked about, and his employer would be certain to hear of it. Dublin is a small city. Everyone knows everyone else's business.
In his excited imagination, he heard old Mr. Leonard call out in his rasping voice, "Send Mr. Doran here, please." All of his long years of service gone for nothing, all of his industry and diligence thrown away.
There must be reparation made in these cases.
The recollection of his confession the night before was a cause of acute pain to him. The priest had drawn out every ridiculous detail of the affair, and in the end, he had magnified his sin that he was almost thankful at being afforded a loophole of reparation.
It is all very well for the man. He can go his ways as if nothing has happened, having had his moment of pleasure. But the girl has to bear the brunt. The question was, what reparation would be made?
While he was sitting helplessly on the side of his bed in his shirt and trousers, Polly tapped lightly on the door and entered. She told him all, that she had made a clean breast of it with her mother, and her mother would speak with him that morning. She cried and threw her arms around his neck, saying,
Oh, What am I to do at all? She would put an end to herself, she said.
He comforted her feebly, telling her not to cry. It would all be all right, never fear. It was not altogether his fault that this had happened. He remembered well late one night as he was undressing for bed, she had tapped on his door.
She wanted to relight her candle, but for hers had been blown out by a gust.
She wore a loose, open combing jacket of printed flannel. Her white instep shone in the opening of her furry slippers, and the blood glowed warmly behind her perfumed skin. As she lit and steadied her candle, a faint perfume arose.
They used to go upstairs together, on tiptoe, each with a candle, and on the third landing exchange reluctant good nights. They used to kiss.
He remembered well her eyes, the touch of her hand, and his delirium.
But delirium passes.
The instinct of the celibate warned him to hold back, but the sin was there. Even his sense of honor told him that reparation must be made for such a sin. He stood up and put on his coat and waistcoat, more helpless than ever.
Suddenly he remembered the night when one of the music hall artistes, a little blonde Londoner, had made a rather free allusion to Polly. The artiste, a little paler than usual, kept smiling and saying there was no harm meant.
But Jack kept shouting at him that if any fellow had tried that sort of thing, game on with his sister, that he'd bloody well put his teeth down his throat. So he would.
Polly sat for a little time on the side of her bed, crying. Then she dried her eyes and went over to look at the looking glass. Then she went back to bed again and sat at the foot. She regarded the pillows for a long time, and the sight of them awakened in her mind secret, amiable memories.
At last she heard her mother calling. She started to her feet, ran to the banisters.
Polly, Polly, come down, dear. Mr. Duran wants to speak to you.
And then she remembered.
What she had been waiting for.
Thank you.
Yes, hello, my name is Jason Thompson, a name I changed from James Walker, as James Walker sounded too ethnic. A vegan, an individual of indeterminate gender and ethnicity, and a neo-Nazi walk into a bar. The vegan asks for a shot of grain alcohol. The individual of indeterminate gender and ethnicity asks for a Shirley Temple. Or a Roy Rogers, and the neo-Nazi orders a stein of beer, but asks the bartender to hold the stein. My amoral ex-wife just got handed a community service rap for sexually assaulting a comatose geriatric in a palliative care unit. I thought you were into youngsters, I commented. A diaper is a diaper, she replied. When I finally left home shortly after my 45th birthday, I was sad, lonely, and I really missed my parents. But it wasn't until I found steady employment at an enormous licensed whorehouse that I realized just quite how much I missed my mother. There was a sense of foreboding in the structure's dark, cavernous embrace, redolent of both primitive truths and timeless trickery. Upon entering, I was quickly encircled by a group of scabrous would-be seducers, flicking their tongues and scratching their chlamydia sores with lizard-like dexterity. Breathing in deeply in an attempt to ward off panic, I was instead immediately tornado tag-teamed by the overpowering sensory assault of sickly sweet perfume, cold sweat, crusty ejaculate, vomit, boiled cabbage, putrefaction, stale beer, kitty litter, come fuck me boots, laxatives, saliva, urinal cakes, genital scouring pads, damp antediluvian caves, cigarette smoke, despair, chewing gum, urine, expired naloxone kits, stuffed animals, corned beef on rye, malfunctioning defibrillators, little pink ankle socks, mortgage foreclosure, blood, tinfoil, excrement, burning rubber, and bleach. Home, sweet home. God, how I missed it. Well, if I can't pull off back to the womb, maybe I can manage back to my room. I decided to theatrically coordinate my return to the family hearth by arriving on Mother's Day, hoping the occasion would afford me and my mother the opportunity to ironically trauma bond over our mutual eating disorder, a condition traditionally and fallaciously thought of as a woman's disease. Save for my mother's sense of fair play and second-wave feminist zeal, I would never have been privy to the mysterious world of voluntary malnourishment and its rigorous clandestine rituals. It's a brutal regime, anorexia, a form of dietary self-flagellation, a fetishistic obsession with physical exercise, coupled with a denial and refusal of the very thing that fuels that obsession: food. Family meals have always been a source of utter terror for me as I try and sit quietly whilst sweat pours off my forehead, contemplating my doom as well-meaning friends and relatives say innocuous things like, "Pass the potatoes," or "Would you like some more gravy?" The most innocent of expressions turned into declarations of war against my fragile, shattered psyche. The comforting familiarity of breaking bread with loved ones transformed somehow into a medieval inquisition, courtesy of my tenuous grip on reality. My shrinking gray matter and nutritionally deprived brain visualizing a grotesque, multi-headed gastrointestinal flesh orgy of disembodied gaping mouths, perpetually eating and regurgitating their young. So yes, it's more than just good genes that create a successful anorexic. It's hard work, discipline, and creativity as well. Or as we like to say, an apple a day, well, it's really all you need. I flirted with bulimia for a while, but the constant vomiting, which had started back in my heroin snorting days, was wrecking my teeth. Great for the core, though. Am I right, ladies? Toxic masculinity? What about corrosive, corroding, acidulous femininity? What about vaginal acid? You know, the kind of paint-peeling, searing, eye-watering, parturitional discharge that not only dissolves and deteriorates your penis, but shapes, shreds, reconfigures, and, yes, gentlemen, invaginates what remains of your pathetic, obsolete, way past its due date, male soul. Thank you.
It was kind of by circumstance that Jason was going to be the last performer, but thank God he was. And I say that affectionately and with all due respect, because you can't follow that. As of 9:06 p.m., we've reached the end of this particular episode of Off the Page. I wonder if anybody watching this would give me 45 seconds for one act of complete, total sentimentality. Say yes, please. A million years ago, and if you really want to be authentic, 1983. Oh God, yeah, 1983. I was an aspiring actor at the tender age of 14 at a performing arts high school in Toronto. You may notice I don't have any Academy Awards, Tony Awards, Golden Globe Awards, Dora Awards, Actor Awards. But I liked the education, and one of my favorite teachers was a gentleman called Weldon Ridalls, who wore corduroy pants and kind of a Kurt Cobain cardigan, unironically, so it was just an old guy in a cardigan, and was paunchy and very clearly was fond of having an occasional drink. One of the things he gave this class of aspiring brandos, etc., was the Spoon River Anthology. So the pieces we did tonight were not the ones we were told to perform, but they were the ones that I picked up in that book. And the only reason I ever picked up that book is that firstly, he gave it to us as an exercise, and secondly, he genuinely liked it. And you could feel that. I ran out of touch with him shortly after high school. And that's kind of unusual because there are a lot of other teachers I would run into at plays or at the French Festival or when I was in university doing film. I would run into them at random, I could talk to them. I never managed to find Weldon again, and he passed away, I believe, around 10 years ago. That said, that collection of poetry led me to read a bunch of other items along that line, kind of free speech. And I've read better and I've read worse, but I never had more impact than realizing you don't need to do rhyming iambic pentameter and that type of thing. So Weldon was genuinely one of my favorite people. And aside, I believe, from one conversation when I was in university on a phone, where I said, listen, we should have a beer sometime. That was it. Never got to talk to him again. His presence is somewhere in my psyche tonight, for what it's worth. Even just for 7.5 minutes of poetry. If it was any good, it belongs to him. So, cheers. That's the end of the rampant sentimentality. Everybody here, everybody watching this, thank you again for this exercise in Reader's Theater. Everybody who's still here, once again, beverages, foodstuffs to my deliberate right, which would be your deliberate left, because I haven't been on a stage so long I forgot stage right and stage left, and it's different. Anyhow, I'm also going to be leading a storytelling event next Friday, and anybody is welcome to come up with a story. Under 8 minutes is perfect, 10 minutes if it's engaging, and if I can steal it and it's good, I'll give you 12 minutes. I want to thank everybody who is taking part in this, not in alphabetical order, just in how I see them in the audience right now. Jason Thompson of Hamilton, Jen Frankel of Hamilton, Brian Theriault of Toronto. Thanks everybody for being here. I hope to do it again. Any questions, any answers, speak to me after the performance. And once again, thanks very much. Good night.